8 days later, we've had tons of time to play the Minecraft Copper Age update, but was it actually a good update? The Copper Golem, whilst it looks very cool, is its features actually pretty useless? Today we're going to discuss all this, so let's dive in. The Copper Golem was all excited about. He looks like a cool guy. I will not take that away from him. It was also our first mob that came from the mob vote losers to actually get added to the game, which everybody wanted for a very long time. However, the reality wasn't as good as we all thought. For example, the Copper Golem only actually checks for 10 chests before he just puts the random 16 items in any chest that he can find. Unless, of course, he can find the item in them 10 chests. Of course, this makes sense, but he also has a very low reach, and considering most people stack their chests on top of each other, this means that a vast majority of people's storages need to be redesigned for the Copper Golem to actually be utilized. And I'm going to be honest, most people probably won't do this because it will just be considered a waste of time, and you may as well just go and fill the chest yourself. Don't get me wrong, all of this makes total sense. The Copper Golem is a really small item, literally the size of one block. Of course, he's not going to be able to reach 3 or 4 blocks higher. However, it does mean the entire point of having him around is pretty useless. Maybe I just need to experiment more with the Copper Golem, but other than the fact he looks really cool and it's great to have him walking around, and the Copper Golem statues are really cool, I don't think I'll ever actually utilize him in the game. Another huge addition to the game was the copper armor and tools, which in my opinion is a great change to the game. However, I only play on forever/long-term worlds, so this is something in the update that I won't utilize. And of course, I'm not the only player in Minecraft who does this as well. So in general, there is no reason for us to be excited about these features. However, from a new player's perspective, I can see why this is great. And I've seen a lot of people say this is the best thing from the update, especially for people who are constantly creating new worlds. I know when I created a little bit of a hardcore world for myself last year, copper was everywhere. Finding iron was very difficult, especially when you compared the rates of both. For me, the one thing I am truly happy about in this update is the shelves. This is because I've wanted the vertical slab for years. There's been so many builds that would have been 10 times easier had I had a vertical slab. So the shelf for me is the only item that I can actually come out with 8 days later and say, you know what, I'm going to be utilizing this a lot. This is closely followed by the green torch and the green lanterns. I think there'll be a couple of horror builds, especially this month, where I'll utilize it. Outside of that, I'm not really too sure though. One of my biggest pet peeves as well is the fact that the lantern can oxidize, but somehow its light level doesn't change. For me, that is a feature that just seems very bizarre and odd. And of course, games aren't necessarily realistic, especially not Minecraft with floating block. It just personally makes sense to me though. Very petty, and it doesn't affect the update overall, but it's just something I wanted to throw in here when we're talking about if it's a bad or good update. Overall though, and this is my biggest concern, this update just felt like filler content. Unlike the update we're getting later in the year with the winter update, that feels more game changing and stuff that will actually be useful in years to come. Whereas this update just feels like something which is cool right now, and it will be probably for the next few days or weeks. But then in the long-term future, when we're speaking months and years down the line, most people are going to look at this update, feel very insignificant, and probably not utilize any of this stuff. I think the love for the Copper Golem will be because the Copper Golem looks cool, looks cute, and is a great guy to have around your house. In terms of his actual features though, I think most people will frown upon them and just decide to use other auto storages or just, you know, put stuff in the chest themselves. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the winter update is perfect, but I do feel the spear and also the new Nautilus mob, I think both of them offer far much more than anything in this update. And of course, it's all opinions and you may disagree, but for me, this felt very filler, whereas the update later in the year feels a lot more game changing and something that's going to keep us entertained for a lot longer. I am aware, in my opinion, it might just seem very negative and it may not be shared with many, but that is why we have a comment section, and I really hope you take the time to leave a comment of your own opinion. How are you finding this update?